Amen. Amen. All right, here we go. Esther chapter 5. On the screen here we got counterfeit gospel, but it's Esther's false ascension, if you would. Esther's false ascension or counterfeit. In chapter 1, we discovered Vashti the queen. We saw how Vashti the queen got unjustly removed from power for doing the right thing, for making a stand against the state. In chapter 2, we saw how Esther replaced Vashti by winning a beauty contest. In chapter 3, we saw how Haman was provoked to be an anti-Semite by Mordecai. And in chapter 4, we saw the bitter cries of anti-Semitism by Mordecai as he went out into the middle of the street and screamed and yelled and cried a bitter cry. And in this chapter, Esther is supposedly going to sacrifice herself, defeat death, and rise on the third day dressed in royal apparel, and will be granted half the kingdom. This is sort of a copycat inversion, if you would. As we're going to see, it's going to be a sort of a copycat inversion of the death, resurrection, and ascension to the right hand of the Father by our Lord Jesus Christ. So let's get into this. The breakdown of this chapter, verses 1 to 2, will be Esther's defeats death on the third day. Verse 3, Esther granted half the kingdom. Verses 4 through 8, Esther bends the king to her will. Verses 9 through 12, Haman is duped by Esther's flattery. Verses 13 to 14, Haman falls for the anger trap once again. Let's get into it. Verse 1 of chapter 5. Now it came to pass on the third day that Esther put on her royal apparel. Remember, she had been fasting for 3 days. And she said, you know what? Mordecai said, you better go and try to petition the king on behalf of our people because Haman wants to kill all of the Jews. And so Esther initially, hesitated, and Mordecai said, if you don't do this, you may end up dead. Wink, wink. And deliverance will come from another place. And then, so she said, if I perish, I perish. And then she called for a fast, a 3-day fast, to basically mourn her death, if you would, her symbolic death that she was going to potentially suffer. All right, so back to verse 1 here. It says, and now it came to pass on the third day that Esther put on her royal apparel and stood in the inner court of the king's house, over against the king's house, and the king sat upon his royal throne in the royal house, over against the gate of the house. And it was so, when the king saw Esther, the queen, standing in the court, that she obtained favor in his sight. And the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther drew near and touched the top of the scepter. Now, when you look at this, it's kind of interesting how Esther plays this. It seems more like a seductive act. I look at this more like, has anybody ever seen that song where that lady dresses up as Santa Claus and starts singing Santa Baby, Santa Baby? There's a whole song on it. This is what I picture going on here. She puts on her royal apparel, probably, in some sort of a seductive way, because that's how she became queen, by the way. She became queen because she won a beauty contest, not because she was the most upstanding moral woman of the day, not because she came from a family that was well trusted by the Persians. She literally just won a beauty contest and was able to seduce the king into picking her. So we can't lose sight of how Esther got into power in the first place. And I'll say this, that is how all false religions gain control over the minds of people, or gain power, or become the state-sanctioned religion, is by appearance, by flattery, by deception, by looking good, looking better than the real thing. Okay, looking better than the real thing. And we found out, it's interesting, we found out that on Thursday, when we did our line-by-line study this week, that our government is looking to spend over $1 billion to combat anti-Semitism, but it's spending $0 to combat anti-white and anti-Christian hate. What does that tell us? It tells us that the state, America, is now protecting the false queen, the false religion. It's protecting Zionism instead of Christianity now. So, we know that, and Damien mentioned in the beginning, our nation was founded by Christians. It was founded based on the gospel of Jesus Christ. But that's been replaced here recently by the state anyways, not by all the people, by many of the people. Christianity, true biblical Christianity, has been replaced by the state, and now Zionism is the guarded, state-sanctioned, protected religion of the land, while inverting Christianity as the potential dangerous gospel, dangerous way. Okay, so she puts her hand right on the top of the scepter, probably in a slow, seductive manner, just to really just get that king just thinking about the of Esther's beauty in that royal apparel. And now she's gently touching the top of my king's staff, making herself look submissive. And this is the interesting part about Esther, is she makes herself look submissive to the king, when in reality, she is manipulating the king. Okay. And this whole thing is so fascinating when you look at this. I tell you what, when you start discovering that Esther literally is the prototype of all the false gospels that are out there, and you start seeing that, you start seeing all the details of why this is, you can't unsee it. No matter how people try to spin this book back on you and say, and they justify this point and that point and that point. And you'll see here in a minute, I'll give you a comparison, but this is a fascinating book, and we see that everything is inverted the way that it really should be. And you'll notice this in this book, Esther is literally going to be in control of the king or the state through manipulation, seduction, and all those types of things. All the things that Mystery Babylon does in Revelation 17 and 18. She seduces the kings of the earth. But she does that. But, when you look at the way she does that, the book of Esther itself is an inversion. Now, I don't want to take away from godly women, right? There are some really godly women that have done some great things. You have you have Deborah in the book of Judges, who led the Israelites out to battle because there were no strong men. The men were all weak and so forth. But when you look at the book of Esther, I feel that we're seeing a role reversal here. The king is not actually leading, okay? The man is not actually leading. He thinks he's leading, but because he's being led by his lust. But the real leader here is Esther. That's an inversion of the gospel itself. It's like this. It's like saying this. As Christians, the bride of Christ, let's figure out a way to deceive Jesus into doing our will. Does that make any sense? That's what Esther does during this whole book. If she's supposedly a type of the bride of Christ, which most Christians portray her as that as they read this book, do you think it's a good thing that she's manipulating the king, which would be a type of God or Christ? And by the way, how could this king be a type of God or Christ when he's too busy in the ballroom entertaining people and everybody getting drunk and him making stupid decisions? Okay? I say the ballroom because that banquet hall is a ballroom. And I find it fascinating that all of a sudden we see all these strange things pop up in current events. Trump wants to build a ballroom. The book of Esther is centered around the ballroom. Without the ballroom, there is no Esther. Without the ballroom, there is no removal of Queen Vashti. And without the ballroom, there is no entrapment of Haman. It all centers around the ballroom. This is where most everything takes place, where all the deception, where all the seduction, the deception, the manipulation happens. Makes sense, right? You get people into that comfortable mood. You get the wine flowing. You get all the women, the Esthers working their magic on all the political figures. Do you think there's a reason why why this ballroom needs to be built? Even it may not even be Trump's idea. The little Mordecai's that advised him might have thought, man, a ballroom would be really cool. Okay? Man, I'll tell you what, they could do a lot of magic with a ballroom and deceiving the leaders of the world, getting the honeypots after them and all that kind of stuff, flattering them, you name it. It's amazing when you look at what this book has to reveal to us about what's really happening. Okay, verse 3. Then said the king unto her, what wilt thou, Queen Esther? And what is thy request? It shall be even given to thee the half of the kingdom. Now, what's going on here? The last chapter, Esther acted like if she went and talked to the king, because she hadn't been summoned in front of the king for 30 days, that there's a law that says anybody who approaches the king, it's a death penalty if you just go up and approach him and you're not invited, unless he holds out the golden scepter and shows you favor. Okay. She's the queen. She's not a normal citizen. She's the queen. So how could she be risking her life to go tell the king that there's some plot to destroy all the Jews, her people? Why doesn't she just do that? Right. I mean, why can't in every other kingdom, you're never going to see I doubt there was ever a law in history, unless you're looking at something really bizarre, where the queen could not approach the king. And if she did uninvited, the king would have her killed for that. I mean, this doesn't even make any sense, right? The only reason it makes sense is this. It's a false plot designed to play on your emotions, designed to create all of these dramatic reversals, to really hook you into the story, like to make you feel that Esther was really putting her life on the line. And this is fascinating. I want you guys to think about this. You know, like somebody, and I don't want to spend my time ripping on Trump and everything, but because of what he did to us recently and how he's attacked good Christian men and how he had the Zionist lady come in and unseat Thomas Massey, by funding the opponent and all that kind of stuff going on. I'm going to say this about Trump. Now I lost my train of thought because I was going back, getting into the weeds there. Where was I with this? Anybody give me a reminder where I was going with this? Yeah, I can't remember now. Darn it. I do that to myself too often. I start giving too many details and I should have just got to the point. That was a really important point. I can't remember now.
Oh, about the opponent and how he had the girl go up there.
Yeah, but that was in the weeds. That's what got me off of my topic. Okay, whatever, forget it. It'll come back to me if it's important. Okay, verse 3, it says, "And what wilt thou?" And the king said unto her, "What wilt thou, Queen Esther, and what is thy request? It shall be given thee to the half of the kingdom." Okay, so, oh man, it almost came back there. I had it and I just lost it. Okay, so let's just talk about this first, and maybe it'll come back to us. So she's getting half of the kingdom here now. So, this is, and I think that part's going to come back to me when I show this slide here in a second. Hopefully we'll see. So she's awarded half the kingdom. So now I know where it is. Okay, here we go. It's back. I finally got it back. this idea, that Trump left his his cushion life. He was a rich guy, right? And we were sold into that, right? Like, what does Trump have to run for? And I've probably even repeated it myself. Well, he's a rich guy. He could just retire in luxury. But is that really what motivates Trump? Okay, so that does really, when you break that down, whether you agree with Trump or not, a guy that's geared like Trump is a guy that's geared towards achievement. I want to achieve the next great thing. But he can sell it as, like Esther did, if I perish, I perish. It's a false, what I'm trying to say is a false self-sacrifice. It really isn't a self-sacrifice, though she's selling it as so. Trump running for president really wasn't a self-sacrifice back in that time. Yeah, he got attacked, he got vilified, so you could say it was a self-sacrifice in that sense, but not if your goal is building yourself up, okay? Of course, we're sold that he wanted to make America great again and that this was all for pure love of country, right? But as we're seeing, him advancing the Zionist agenda versus the Christian agenda, that has woken a lot of people up into thinking, okay, did we get conned? Did we get deceived? Or did he just do a 180 on us? Did he do a Judas on us? We don't know exactly. What we do know is he's starting to really turn towards the pro-Zionist way and maybe mouthing that he's protecting Christians, but the money he's spending is not being spent to protect Christianity. It's being spent to protect Zionism. So Jesus always tells us, by their fruits you shall know them, not by what they say. Esther made it look like, if I perish, I perish. But did she really risk her life? Okay. And then you don't believe the sales pitches that people give you. Look at what's really going on. What are they actually doing? Okay. Now, in Trump's first administration, I don't want to make this all about Trump. He did do a lot of good things. And so that was, like the getting the Supreme Court justices and so on. So it's not as though he didn't do anything, but something happened, something changed. And a lot of people are wondering what that was. All right. So let's look at this. I'm going to get my glasses on here. Esther, the carnal counterfeit gospel. This chart compares and contrasts just a few. I didn't want to make this like a 10-page document, so I just grabbed a few points that I noticed. Number one there, I'll just get my little highlighter here. Okay, on the third day after the preparation, Esther on the third day after the preparation and fasting period. So she had a 3-day period that really mimicked Jesus Christ, where his 3-day period where he was in the grave. And then after that third day, he arose from the dead and so forth. So after the crucifixion, you see from Matthew 28, 1 Corinthians 15, verse 4. But the contrast between Esther's 3 days and Jesus' 3 days is this. You see, Zionism rises through political maneuvering. True victory is through the death, defeating resurrection of Jesus Christ. So on the third day, we saw that Esther supposedly rose in that she didn't die and that she was alive before the king. But the fasting period was the period that supposedly mimics, if you would, the true death and burial of Jesus Christ, as we see here. 3 days of fasting and putting on royal apparel for calculated seduction and access. Jesus, real suffering, death and burial, no self-adornment, no I'm so great, I'm this and that, I've done this, nobody's better than me, nobody can do this but me type of a thing. Full obedience to the Father's will. Zionism relies on external beauty and strategy. The true gospel, the true rise flows from internal sacrifice and resurrection power. Okay. Another point. Esther, true, she boldly stands in the inner court of the earthly king Ahasuerus, state power. It's a risk, but she expects favor. Well, when you got the whole deep state working for you, it's not really that big of a risk. Ascends. Jesus ascended to the right hand of the Father in heaven. Hebrews 1 verse 3, Acts chapter 2 verses 32 to 33. Where the contrast we see between Esther and Jesus here in this point of ascension, if you would. The false queen approaches the pagan state for favor. The true king returns to divine authority. Last point here, adorns herself. Esther adorns herself in luxurious royal apparel to captivate. Jesus appears in glorified resurrection body, shows wounds as proof of victory. So what is the difference here between Esther and Jesus? Esther uses seductive pageantry, beauty contests, versus authentic glory. Replacement system wears the outward trappings of legitimacy. All right, there we have it there. Like I said, I could have made this a few pages long, and I didn't. There is a huge, when you really take apart Esther chapter by chapter and verse by verse, you see that Esther is none other than the carnal counterfeit gospel. They make everything look real, and this is why deception is so powerful, because the false thing is always a copycat of the true. It looks real. Like Esther, it looked like she did a sacrifice. Trump, it looked like he gave everything up for the country, right? There's all these assassination plots and people are still trying to kill him and whatever else. But the fruit of what he's doing right now is pro-Zionism, okay? And he had just got done blaspheming Christ with the pictures. And yeah, it's like we've been making excuses for every one of these actions because we don't want to believe it. And the White House is continually putting out posts saying, don't be a panican. Trust in Trump. Okay? Don't be a panican. Trust in Trump. So we keep getting tug along on this long thing, like Trump's playing 5D chess. This war in Iran is ultimately going to turn around. It's going to be a great reversal for America. And Trump's going to be the savior of it all. And I'll tell you this, if it does happen that way, which I don't think it's going to happen that way, if it does happen that way, imagine how good the counterfeit's going to look at that point, okay? Because we know that the Antichrist, and I'm not saying Trump's the Antichrist, but you got to be aware of what the Antichrist does. He starts the wars in the first place, and then he comes on and makes the peace deal and looks like the savior. That's what Satan has done from the beginning, right? He creates the controversy, then arises on the scene as the savior of the controversy. And the book of Daniel tells us that's exactly how the Antichrist comes in. He comes in bringing peace and prosperity. So right now we have a lot of true conservatives who are still holding on to the old MAGA agenda, if you would, make America great again agenda, America first, while Trump is holding on to the Israel first agenda. Now, if Trump literally succeeds at this, the true America first people are very upset. Why are we doing this? This is a dangerous thing. We don't want to get involved in this conflict. If Trump could somehow pull this off to make it look like we should have trusted him all along because look, he's bringing peace. To me, that's more scary than the alternative that he's got. The alternative is that he's gotten us into a quagmire and things are going to get really bad. Because if he can turn around and make this look good, there's going to be some people that initially questioned what Trump was doing, and now they might jump back on the bandwagon, and it might be harder to get them off. Pastor Ben, why do you say this? I mean, don't you want Trump to do good? Don't you? After he blasphemed the Lord Jesus Christ, okay, and after he attacked good people who are exposing Zionism, I don't really need to know a whole lot more, okay? I don't really need to know a whole lot more, because you can't, and having an idol of yourself on your golf property and saying everybody's talking about it, it's great, it's wonderful, a golden statue of yourself. I don't really need to know much more if a leader violates the first and second commandment, and many other commandments, by the way. But if he violates those and makes no real apology for that, I already know the fruit. This isn't going in a good direction, okay? Because I don't need to look past the 10 commandments to figure out what the fruit is. Verse 4. And Esther answered, if it seem good unto the king, let the king and Haman come this day unto the banquet that I have prepared for him. Now, this is interesting. Why didn't she just say, right when the king said, I'll give you half the kingdom, what's your request, Esther? Why did you approach me? Why didn't she just say, King, there's this wicked man named Haman. He's an anti-Semite, and he wants to kill all of the Jews because they've done nothing wrong other than Mordecai really antagonized him when he did that to him. But we're not going to talk about that. Okay, we're not going to talk about that aspect. This guy Haman, he wants to kill all the Jews. Why didn't she just say that? The king already offered her half the kingdom, but she's not going to reveal that just yet. Again, why isn't she going to do this? Because Esther has a strategy of manipulation. And this is known, I guess, as I did this research. I'm not, an expert in the field of salesmanship and political maneuvering. This is a common tactic, I guess, where you don't rush the ask. You drag it along because you're going to get more out of your ask if you drag it out a little bit longer versus getting right to the point and saying, this is what I want. Okay. And also she needs to get deeper into the king's mind to guarantee, because she's got to work more. She's got to have more time in the ballroom, more wine, more seductive to guarantee that her request to grant her power over Haman and do all the dirty deeds they're going to do to Haman later on. She's going to need she's going to need time to really get deep into the king's mind. So this is a strategy that the deep state employs. Don't rush the ask. Just bring that politician along with you. Just wine and dine him a little bit longer. And then when the time is just right, you'll ask. Okay. But let me underline this here. It says, let the king and Haman come this day. It's all in caps because this is where the second acrostic is in the book of Esther, where God's sacred name is hit. God's not mentioned anywhere in the book of Esther. Prayer is not mentioned anywhere. No mention of giving glory to God or anything like that. But God's name mysteriously is hidden 5 times in this book. I have no doubt, and I'm going to get ahead of myself a little bit, it's because though this book was snuck in or hidden by Satan's deep state, the secret pagan societies who always operate in secret, it's God's thumbprint letting them know that you think this is a secret plot or strategy on your half, but God is watching the whole thing and he's allowing it to happen. And literally he is the secret guiding force really behind it all. And because it's a big test. It's a big test. And we'll talk more about that in a second. But I promise this, and we're going to do it right here. I have on the screen here the second acrostic, YHVH, spelled forwards, because you might wonder, what is an acrostic? Well, there are 4 words in the Hebrew. We got here, well, I guess, let's use a different color. 4 Hebrew words. That it's Yabu, Hamalek, Vahlam, Hayan, something like that, right? I don't know if I said that exactly right. But each one of these words in the Hebrew begins with a majestic letter in the Hebrew, a bold letter in the Hebrew manuscripts. This here is Y in the Hebrew, HVH. So that phrase where it says, let come the king and Haman this day, or let our royal dinner, you could translate as that. That is where the sacred name of God is hidden. It's hidden because it's the first letter. The name of Yahweh is hidden in the first letter of each of the next consecutive word. And Hebrew reads from right to left. So this is not actually backwards. This is forwards. So here the second acrostic is the Hebrew name of God spelled forwards. Okay? Why would that be? You can come back to me now, Luce. No problem. Why would that be? If this is a backwards story, if the whole book of Esther is a con job, a false gospel. Well, the common interpretation of this is simply, well, God's name is hidden 5 times in the book of Esther to give credibility to the book of Esther. Though you don't see God's name mentioned or prayer or whatever, God's still working behind the scenes to make sure Esther and Mordecai prosper. And that sounds believable, right? That's a believable take. But here's the deal. The 5th acrostic that we're not going to get into today, I believe, is the key, if you would. What's going on? There's a slow thing.
It just says like warning. It says that the stream's.
Jacob, you're not on the live stream, are you? Yeah. Yeah, you might need to get off because you're slowing down the bandwidth.
Still says good, but
Okay.
just says excellent.
Yeah, let's get off of that bandwidth because if you're on the same width, we're losing stream power. Okay, so the last acrostic, the 5th acrostic, is the key to all of the acrostics. When we get there, you will see something that's going to blow your mind. And you know what? I'm just going to leave it right there. I'm not even going to tell you what it is. I'm going to have a little fun here, okay? I'm not going to tell you what it is, but by the time we get to that 5th acrostic, you're going to have no doubt in your mind, at least I think you will. I don't have any doubt in my mind that it was God's signature that this whole book was an inversion of the truth. And fascinating. That's why you got the name of God forward, backwards. It's like, hey, there's an inversion here. There's something going on. Forwards, backwards, forwards, backwards. And then ultimately I don't know if it's the 5th acrostic or if it's the 4th, but it is the only one that's different, where God's name, he uses another one of his names, and it's the name I am, or Iyah in the Hebrew, okay? The sacred name I am that I am. All right. But I'm not going to tell you what it is. We're going to have a little fun with that. All right. That way you got to come back to every study, every chapter, because you don't know when it's going to happen unless you get ahead of me and start researching it. But even then, it's going to be hard to find anybody with the view that we're going to present here, okay? It's going to be very hard to find that. All right. Verse 5. Then the king said, cause Haman to make haste, that he may do as Esther has said. So the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared. So she invites the guy to this banquet, to the ballroom that was supposedly the guy that is her enemy, right? Well, what does she do that for? Verse 6. And the king said unto Esther at the banquet of, whoa, guys, you got to see, you can't unsee this here. Wine. Get the king drunk again. What happened last time he got drunk? He did a stupid move and tried to parade Vashti. He removed Vashti, the moral, decent queen, the rightful queen. Now we're not going to ask the request right away. We're going to get the king drinking wine again. May I tell you guys this, and I did not plan this. I feel this is directly from the Spirit here. What cup does Mystery Babylon hold in her hand in the book of Revelation? She holds a cup filled with wine. Okay? And it's said there in the book of Revelation, Mystery Babylon intoxicates the kings of the world with this golden cup that is full of all the abominations and the filthiness that is committed on the earth. Mystery Babylon uses that cup of wine, that's delusion, deception, lies in the spiritual sense, to control all of the kings of the world. I feel there is a direct connection to Esther and Mystery Babylon. Esther is Mystery Babylon, by the way. I don't even have to make this direct connection. Her name means Ishtar, Queen of Babylon. Well, in the book of Revelation, we're told that there's this Ishtar, Mystery Babylon, that controls all the kings of the earth. What are we finding out? What are all of our politicians like Thomas Massey and all these guys finding out? Well, it's coming from Zionism. Zionism and Mystery Babylon control the kings of the earth through seduction, flattery, lies, manipulation of economy, money, and so on and so forth. It's happening before our very eyes. Okay, back to the verse here. Verse 6, chapter 5. And the king said unto Esther at the banquet of wine, what is thy petition? Oh, building the expectation. Oh, we're so into this story right now, aren't we? Just tell him, Esther. Just tell him. And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? Even to the half of the kingdom it shall be performed. Oh my goodness, guys. Does not America, our state, our government, since the year 1948, maybe even before that, some think really heavily after Kennedy's assassination, do we not offer Zionism literally the half of the kingdom and more? What is thy request? Hey, Esther, Haman's, what is your request? Well, there's a lot of anti-Semitism going on in America. There's these white Christians that don't like the state of Israel, and they're saying that we're doing bad things and we have too much influence. Oh, Donald Trump, the state, I'll have the Department of Justice. Don't worry about it. I'll have the Department of Justice form an anti-Semitism task force. And we'll use the government, we'll use taxpayer money to pay for this. What else would you like? You know what else happens? Oh my goodness. What's her name? Our director of national intelligence. They said that she left because her husband had cancer and all that. But the inner truth is that's coming out as she was forced out. Who is she replaced with? A Zionist woman, okay? A Zionist woman who is now, because the other woman actually did not want us to go to war for Iran, did see a lot of this conspiracy, and I'm trying to remember her name now, and I'm the director of national, Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard. Yeah. So she's been on the chopping block for a while, right? And it's kind of been dragging on. I think she wanted to stay there probably to be a good influence, but they finally forced her out and they replaced her with a different woman. Okay. It almost is like a Vashti. You almost see the Vashti Esther connection there. You have Tulsi Gabbard making a moral righteous stand oftentimes, from what I hear, against Zionism. And she's replaced by a pro-Zionist lady. And I think I haven't done a lot of digging into who she claims to be, if she claims to be of Judah and is not. But I encourage you to do that. I think you'll find out. So the state offering full power, half power if you would, but it's really almost full power, to Esther and her people. Verse 7, then answered Esther and said, my petition and my request is, if I have found favor in the sight of the king. This is, again, dragging us on seduction. Not now the king wants to just give her everything because she's playing hard to get, right? This is a hard to get strategy. Oh, yeah, I know. I always read part of the verse and then our camera person, whoever it is, Lucy's doing it right now, is like, is he going to talk now or is he going to keep reading? She's doing a great job, though. No offense, Jacob. She's doing a great job. We fired the old guy because Jacob loves to really dig in deep into the scripture. So he's always researching what I'm saying and doing his searches. At least that's what he says he's doing. And then sometimes he forgets to come back to the camera angle. So we decided, let's let him dig deep here. Okay. If I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition and to perform my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and I will do tomorrow as the king hath said. All right. She's playing hard to get. We all know, girls all know, the girls in the society that like to toy with men know that playing hard to get gets you what you want. You can just toy that little silly boy around and get him to do whatever you want if you just give him a little flattery and then move away from him. Give him a little something and then move away. Okay, this is what false religion does as well. It's not straightforward. It's not honest. It's not pure and holy. It's seduction. Okay? All right, so I'm going to stop here for a second and capture our thoughts thus far. The real sacrifice was Vashti's principled stand against the state, not Esther's pseudo self-sacrifice, followed by crafty manipulation and mastery of the king in the ballroom. Vashti was the one that truly sacrificed herself because what did she do? She stood up for principle. What? And what happened to Vashti? She was removed from being queen. So she was the one that actually sacrificed. The true church, the true Christian politicians that stand up and lose their job for doing so or lose the primary, like Thomas Massey, these are the real heroes, okay? Thomas Massey didn't lose the election, lose the primary election because he was wrong. He lost the election because of Zionist money, because of that old witch Zionist lady that Trump sent over there that owns all these casinos. That was one. I think has made his most significant donor, by the way. She was born in Israel. And so there's a lady that was born in Israel, literally goes over and inserts her money, her millions of dollars, into a primary campaign in Kentucky. Now, you might ask yourself this, why would we allow a Zionist like her to manipulate a local election in Kentucky? That should be the big outroar, okay? That should be where everybody, that's the Vashti. Thomas Massey is of the Vashti spirit, the principled spirit. I'm not going to play ball with this immoral operation that's going on here. I'm going to stand against it. All right. Verse 9. Then went Haman forth that day, joyful and with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he stood not up nor moved for him, he was full of indignation against Mordecai. All right, now I want you guys to see something here. A lot of people ask me this question. They say, well, Pastor Ben, you say that Esther and Mordecai are bad. Does that mean that you think Haman is good? And they think they got me here, right? They think they got me. Are you promoting anti-Semitism, Pastor Ben? No, I'm going to tell you the secret of this book is this. Esther and Mordecai, definitely synagogue of Satan, right? Easy to tell. Haman, on the other hand, is also definitely somebody you do not want to emulate, okay? You do not want to be Haman because he didn't go to God. He didn't go to the Bible. He allowed himself to be provoked to anger, to bitterness. Now, Haman is the kind of guy who sees the Zionist plot. He knows there's a globalist Zionist conspiracy. He's that kind of guy, but he doesn't react from a biblical perspective. He reacts from a worldly perspective. He doesn't, instead, what does he want? Now, Haman's feeling flattered he's getting flattered by the queen, which he's joyful. He thinks the queen loves him. Do you see the deception? The queen brings him to the ballroom, to the banquet hall, to flatter Haman so he would take down his guard. And then immediately after he leaves the ballroom, he sees Mordecai standing there. So he goes from joy to feeling special and privileged because he's got it's just Haman. This banquet in the ballroom is for Haman. Esther makes it for Haman. So he's feeling like, I am somebody special. Who's this Mordecai guy? And he doesn't know that Esther is in on the game. Esther and Mordecai are working together to seal his doom. But the point is, don't be a Haman, okay? Jesus said in the parable of the tares, once you find out there are children of the wicked one, there are a seed that was planted by the devil. In the parable of the tares in Matthew chapter 13, the disciples asked Jesus, when Jesus told them that the devil has children on the earth, the disciples said, should we then go and tear them out of the earth? And should we go get all those evil people? Should we destroy them? But Jesus said this, don't try to harm the tares. Expose them, teach the truth about them, because if you try to harm the tares, you're going to harm the wheat as well. You're going to harm innocent people if you try to harm the tares, because you might not always identify a tare correctly, so on and so forth. But what does Jesus tell his followers? Yes, there are children of the wicked one. They are doing bad things. They look like they're disguised as wheat. They're disguised as children of the kingdom. Leave them alone until the time of the harvest, and the angels will gather up the tares and burn them in the harvest fire. Okay? So Haman is the opposite. He wants to do the burning that the angels are going to do. He wants to do the reaping. I'm going to go get those. We're going to kick those bastards out of our country. They were kicked out of this country, and that country already. And the next on the list is America. Let's get them out of here right now. Okay? No. You know what? The best way you can make the serpent seed of non-effect, the best way you can combat the Esthers and the Mordecais is simply this, and we say it at the beginning of every one of our studies. Strive to follow the commandments of God and the testimony of Jesus Christ. If we can do those two things, we strip them of all their power. The law of God. What do you mean? Give me a specific example of that, Pastor Ben. Well, okay, I'll give you an example of this. The Federal Reserve. On a major level, it prints money on interest and charges us interest. Well, the biblical law says you shall not charge interest on loans for your own countrymen. In other words, usury. If everybody stopped using debt, which is almost impossible to do these days to get a house and stuff like that, but if everybody stopped using debt, because the Bible says in the book of Proverbs also, the servant is borrower to the lender. If we could just start networking with other Christians and doing the best we can to free ourselves from debt, that alone takes away all the power of Esther and Mordecai. The Zionists have no power if they don't control the banking if they don't control the money. And so there are a lot of different ways to do this, but falling into their trap of anger and bitterness, and we're just going to go get these people and kick them out of our country too, because it's our time. You just fell into the trap. And you know what? God's allowing that trap to be set. He's allowing you to decide, are you going to react like Haman, or are you going to react in a godly Christian manner? Okay? And that's the big lesson of this book, because the other way will certainly get you defeated. All right, verse 10. Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself. Oh, he's showing a little. He didn't just go grab Mordecai by the neck and choke him to death right there on the spot. Okay, that's good. Now, I'm going to say this. Because we're talking about the Haman, and I'm sorry. I saw a viral video going around on X, and that's what made me think about this. There's this guy goes up to this Jewish guy, and he's holding a microphone, and it says Goy on it. But it looks like it says Goy TV or something like that. But it looks like the Nazi swastika. It's got the colors and the look to it. And he attacks this Jewish guy. He comes out, he starts calling him a filthy, dirty Jew, you stinky, we're going to kick you bastards out, you guys, all this kind of stuff. And I'm sitting here thinking, this is perfect for Zionism, right? You get this guy saying all this stuff that was totally totally filled with anger and hate. And now anybody who questions, they got the perfect footage from this guy, right? Because this is a stereotypical angry anti-Semite that nobody wants to be like. And what they do now, the Mark Levins and others, they'll start saying, well, look at Tucker Carlson's just like this guy. And when you watch that video of that guy, I mean, you can't help but feel sick to your stomach. That poor guy getting accosted by this neo-Nazi freako that claims he's fighting for white people and all that. And every term we use now is slandered because that guy's the image of who they want us to be. And it's our job to not be that guy. Okay? To not be that guy. And like I said, I have no, that when I watched that guy, I was like, this guy's a complete fraud. Either this guy's an absolute nutcase who's fallen into the trap of being a Haman because he sees that there's this Zionist conspiracy going on and he's really mad about it, or more than likely he's being paid by some group like the Southern Poverty Law Center or some other covert operation to create the image that there are these dangerous anti-Semites everywhere and there's no safety here for anybody who's pro-Israel, pro-Zionist and whatnot, okay? And it's a masterful job because, man, I tell you what, I watched the video and if I didn't know better, I'd be thinking, I'm sick to my stomach. Let's get that anti-Semitism task force going. Let's stop all these guys because, man, our country's going to fall apart if we don't do something. But is that really what we're seeing? And do we see that? Do we see this? Is that really the true narrative that America's greatest threat right now is anti-Semitism? Or is it anti-white and anti-Christian hate? We know what it is. Okay, what's really happening is we are being replaced by other people and other religions. That's the real danger. But they want to make us think that this fabricated narrative is the real thing we need to be worried about. Anyways, verse 11. And Haman told them of the glory of his riches, pride, and the multitude of his children, and all things wherein the king had promoted him, and how he had advanced him above the princes and the servants of the king. So, I mean, Esther's trick worked, right? She invited just Haman along to the banquet. Now he's bragging to his wife and his friends. I'm so special. I have all this. And check this out. Verse 12. Haman said, moreover, yea, Esther, the queen. This Zionist religion likes me. Okay. Did let no man come in with the king unto the banquet that she had prepared, but myself. She made this banquet just for me. And tomorrow am I invited unto her also with the king. Not only did I get to go to one special elite banquet, I get to go to a second one tomorrow. Boy, he doesn't know that this is going to be his last day tomorrow. Okay. But verse 13, yet, and I'll say this, the warning also is this. Do not I'll say this, beware of flattery. They say pride comes before the fall. I could reword that and say flattery often comes before the fall, because flattery is when somebody tells you how awesome you are, makes you feel important, just so they can then take advantage of you or use you for their own purposes or destroy you. Okay? In this case, it's meant to destroy him. Verse 13, man, I'll tell you what, a lot of our politicians in Congress would do well to understand this plot, man, because you're being played on all the time to fall into these traps. Verse 13, yet all this availeth me nothing. It means nothing to me, so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate. Now I'll say this. You notice it stressed there, Mordecai the Jew. Okay? Haman's the great anti-Semite. He hates all Jews. It's really important that we don't blame everything on a whole group of people or a whole race of people. Okay? In Jesus' time, there were true Jews and false Jews, right? Fake Jews and real Jews. There were those Jews that converted to Christianity, and there were those that didn't. Okay? And so you don't want to fall into that trap, because they want you to say that it's all. And during Jesus' time, it was the leaders of the Jews that had Jesus put to death. It wasn't necessarily your common everyday one, though there were a lot of common everyday ones that were totally on board with this, but there were other real ones who pulled away and converted. The point is, the serpent seed has mixed itself in with the tribe of Judah. But that doesn't mean that everyone of the tribe of Judah, and they did it this way so they could claim to be the chosen people, right? That doesn't mean everyone of the tribe of Judah is bad or evil, or we should just automatically hate them. That's what the Haman trap is to get you to put a blanket thing on all of them, every single one of them. Now, that isn't to say there isn't a serpent seed who does have natural tendencies to do evil, even if they don't even know they're of the serpent seed. So I'm not taking that away from this aspect. I'm just saying you got to be wise and careful. But here we see here, and now I'm going to highlight this in caps here, this availeth me nothing. This is the third acrostic of the book of Esther, where God's name is hidden. And this time it's backwards, where Haman says, this availeth me nothing, so long as I see Mordecai the Jew there. Now, I'll circle, excuse me. Notice it is now the last letter of each Hebrew word. But it's actually spelled backwards. So it starts with the H and goes that way. YHVH is spelled backwards. And I know you guys think, well, no, that looks forward to me. Hebrew is read from right to left, not left to right. So this is backwards. So God puts his name in there backwards to tell us what? What's the point? I think the point is, don't be stupid like Haman. And when it says this availed me nothing, don't be motivated by anger and hatred. Be motivated by the love and truth of the gospel. That isn't to say that we don't take out that sword of truth and sometimes mock the enemy. But there's a difference. There's a difference. I mean, Jesus went in to the temple and used a cat of nine tails and whipped the serpent cedars out of there. So there's a time and a place. Right now, Haman is clueless because he's so worried about his own pride than the truth of the word. It's all about him. Notice it's all about Haman. And you get some people that understand there's a conspiracy going on, and they make this all about them because the enemy is taking away this from them. The enemy's making the gas prices go up, the food prices go up, which is bad, right? We say that too. But they don't go any further than that, right? They don't go any further than to think that this is an anti-gospel thing. They're deceiving people. They're hurting souls. And that's where we need to be more focused on. Not so much they took this from me and now I can't take my vacation. They took, you know what I mean? Not be focused on the wrong things, which Haman was. It was all about him, not God's glory. So we may say that Esther and Mordecai never prayed to God or never mentioned his name, but neither did Haman. Okay? None of these people are good. They're all bad. Besides Vashti. Verse 14, then said Zeresh his wife and all his friends unto him, let a gallows be made of 50 cubits high. And tomorrow, I think that's like 300 feet in English terms. Is that what we came to the conclusion before? Or is it 150 feet? I can't remember. It's something ridiculously tall. The gallows, 50 feet. Then said Zeresh his wife unto all his friends and all his friends unto him. If Mordecai, because Mordecai made him mad, right? Let a gallows be made of 50 cubits high, and tomorrow speak thou unto the king, that Mordecai may be hanged thereon. And then go thou merrily with the king unto the banquet. And the thing pleased Haman, and he caused the gallows to be made. What a foolish thing to do. What did Haman also do that you don't want to do as a Christian? Listen to bad advice. Okay? Haman listened to bad advice. Haman listened to the fleshly, the worldly point of view here. Oh, that guy, Mordecai wronged you. Prepare a big, huge tree for him, a gallows, 50 cubits high, 150 feet high, or 300 feet. I can't remember which is ridiculously high. 75 feet. Okay, I was wrong on both accounts. It's still really high, right? 75 feet high is like as tall as like a real tree out there, a real oak tree. So that points out to us the ridiculousness of this, right? It's an exaggeration. But they give him bum advice. Go kill that guy. Go kill him, okay? And what's going to happen to Haman later on? There's going to be a huge reversal. His plot to kill the enemy is going to come back on his head and much more. Okay, so don't listen to fools. I'll close with this statement, all right? The Zionists, what we're learning from this book is this. The Zionists want you to either be deceived or enraged by the false gospel. Your job is to be neither, okay? The Zionists want you to either be deceived or enraged by in other words, they want you to either accept Zionism, be pro-Zionist, or they want you to be bitterly angry about it. They don't want you to attack it in a measured, biblical way that actually helps people see the truth. They want you to get mad so they can discredit you and say, look, he is a Haman. And then you've lost it all. So do not be deceived into being either one of those things. That is the whole purpose of this book. And I think that's why God put his sacred name there in 4 times as Yahweh and 1 time as I am to let us know this is a warning that they're going to try and do this to us, but you're not to fall for it. All right. With that said, we will take questions and comments.
I think that was great advice at the end there. That kind of sums up or wraps up this chapter, because that's definitely, I don't feel like I'm being deceived by the Zionists, but I do lean on the side of anger and frustration, and I just think that's good advice to end that with, because I think a lot of people, if you're realizing that this is going on, the first reaction is anger. So,
You know what's interesting? I'll just mention this. Tucker Carlson, and I don't know if he knows this or not, but he would always say, as he was finding out there's this Zionist conspiracy going on, he would always be really careful and say, you know, I think they want us to become what they say we are, and we got to be careful not to become that. And I was thinking, man, if he knew, I don't know if he knew this from the book of Esther or not, but he summed up exactly the point of the book of Esther for us, the major warning for us, not only to not be deceived by it, but don't become that angry, hateful, bitter person that they are telling you are. And if they say it enough, sometimes people, it's funny because the enemy can, if they say you're that enough, it's easy to start feeling like you are that, and you start playing that role. And our job is to be like, nope, I love these people, want them to repent, so on and so forth.
well, and I do think that the truth is there are a lot of good people. I know some, and like actually know them myself personally, and then also just people in the media that with the right heart believe that our job is to protect and bless Israel and God's chosen people, and I mean, and they're doing it with the right heart. So, and I think that all ties in with what is in the book of Revelations, where even the elect can be deceived,
Right.
because it's such a perfect way to deceive people that have the right mind, that are right with God, you know, because how do you argue with protecting Israel and the Jews, which was God's, it's all over the Bible, you know. So I don't know, I just feel like I have to say that, because I know a lot of people that, I think most people believe that we need to be friends and side with Israel and the Jews.
Yeah, I just had a discussion with a family member last night or the night before? And I know we're always sold this idea that he's like, well, he's telling me that I should just kind of be more careful about this book of Esther stuff. And I'm like, no, there's not, I don't have anything to hide, right? I'm not against all the Jews. I'm against Zionism. I'm against false religion. I'm against Satanism. That's what I'm against. So if people want to call me an anti-Semite for that, that's just going to be what it is. I'm not. But his, and I did it again. I went down that trail there. But his point was, and what did you just say at the end there?
Just that a lot of good people.
Oh yeah, okay, I got it now. So he's like, well, they don't know that, because this guy knows that there is this serpent seed and all this. He says, but they don't know that. Like, all these people don't know it. So, and on the most basic level, Israel's our ally and all that. And then he's making this case that we should have bombed Iran way long time ago in '79. And he was making a big argument. Trump hasn't changed at all. He said that we should have done that a long time ago. And I said to him this, I was like, well, the intelligence reports that I've heard of did actually, from the government, I've heard people say this, that there was no nuclear threat, number one. And I said, even if there was, I was like, okay, what you're doing is you're telling me that this group's our ally, yet they just manipulated an election, one of our local elections, Thomas Massey. They had a Epstein Island, which is known to have Mossad ties, Israeli ties, literally used as an operation to entrap our politicians. You got APEC that's, funding politicians. So we have the Iranians. Okay, what if they had a nuclear weapon? That's bad. Okay, maybe they would use it. Maybe we should do something about that. But I said, if you think we ought to do something about that, then we at the same time have to deal with the threat of Israel manipulating our elections, manipulating our government officials. They need to be held accountable too. So why don't we, at the same time, we're already in the Middle East, go to war against both of them and tell them both, you don't mess with the United States. If you're going to mess with us, this is what you get. But that's not what we're doing. But that's the logical conclusion. An ally doesn't manipulate and steal your democracy, your republic from you. That they present the Israeli lobby and their manipulation and control present a more dangerous threat than any other country, whether you're talking about China, whether you're talking about Russia, whether you're talking about Iran, doesn't matter. The greatest immediate threat is Israel, okay? The state of Israel. So, and my point to him is like, okay, we have to take this from, regardless of if some of these guys are serpent seed or not, you have to take this from a biblical perspective. This is what's happening. It's undeniable. The Zionists are manipulating our country. The Bible says you shall use no unrighteous measures in judgment. You have one standard for all. We're using a different standard against Iran than we're using for Israel. Israel can do whatever they want, say whatever they want, commit genocide against in Gaza, but we still support them. But then if Iran does one thing, we're going to nuke them off the face of the earth. That is unrighteous judgment. That's why I said, if we just followed the law of God, the Esthers and the Mordecais would have no power, because we'd have a king that would say, okay, you guys are doing this, you're doing that. If you think we ought to bomb Iran, get ready, put your fists up, because we're going to bomb both of you. Okay? We're going to go to war against anybody who threatens the sovereignty of the United States of America. But that's not what's happening. All right.
Also, I mean, well, there's two more things I wanted to say. One is just where people like Klaus Schwab and George Soros fit in. They have to be a huge part of the Zionist thing, even if they maybe appear not to be. I don't know. What do you think about those guys?
Which guys again?
Well, George Soros, he's like one of the biggest fundraisers. He gives billions of dollars to every left-wing cause, and I think he's a Jew. I think he claims to be a Jew. Or Klaus Schwab, he's the other one. That's kind of, I don't look into them enough, but I know that they're heavily involved in the deep state and all the darkness that is of it. But maybe you haven't looked into those two enough, but they got to have some involvement.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of people, obviously a lot of people are involved. And I think when you're talking about guys like that are big in the banking and financial, that's where a lot of this fake Judah power is. It's in these controlling these institutions versus the true Judah. Yeah. So I want to be careful. I don't want to judge people. I want to let people come to their own conclusion on who I believe might be of the serpent seed or whatnot. But if somebody's doing something that's obviously evil, like by their fruits, by what they're doing, yeah, by all means we should point that out. But I don't know enough about those particular individuals, but I recognize the names, and they've always struck me as names that they're part of this Zionist thing.
Yeah, I do feel like I just wondering if you had studied into any of them and much, but you haven't, so that's okay. Maybe I will.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, I don't know, it's a little pushback, playing devil's advocate a little bit, but I've said this before. I believe Trump is probably one of the most egotistical, prideful human beings that's ever existed on this earth. And I think he's being manipulated to do these things because he's thinking he's doing the right thing. He's being manipulated by his religious, holy leaders that are giving him advice about how great Israel is and we need to protect the Jews and this and that. And he's just doing that because he thinks that will make him even bigger and better than he is. Yeah. But he's done a lot of good things, and he's still doing a lot of good things for our country if you take all that stuff and put it aside. So I have I feel like the other part that I'm struggling is that in a way we're siding with the people on the left in this issue because they're very anti the left movement, the left wing. They're the ones that are the anti-Semites, at the colleges, and they're pro, whatever, the Palestine or whatever it is. I don't follow it enough. I just follow it enough to know and hear, and I'm not very detailed in all my knowledge on it, but it's like for the first time we're kind of siding with people on the left on this issue, and I just that causes concern. But I think we have to look at Trump and see the good things that he's done, because he's done a lot of good things for our country. I mean, everything from trying to make us healthier again, to shutting down our borders, to getting rid of illegal criminals by the millions out of our country. He's doing a lot to improve our economy, even though right now it's not looking so good because of the war and the gas prices and all that. But he's bringing back manufacturing and technology, and he's bringing our energy. He's drill, baby, drill.
Right.
He's anti-green, false, environmental lies. He's totally not being fooled by that. And then he's also been bringing back the Bible and a lot of Christian parts into the government for the first time. Like we just had the 250th, what was it called again?
Rededication.
Rededication,
Yeah,
thank you.
rededication.
And again, he was reading from the Bible, and he was reading scriptures, I think, out of 2 Chronicles about if you turn your country back to God, God will bless you. Marco Rubio gave a really good speech, like a sermon, on how our country was founded on Christian principles and the Bible. And,
Right.
and this is all being done in the White House, or, it's our top leaders. I mean, in any other circumstance, we would be so excited compared to the last presidents we've had, and Biden and Obama and all that, to have a president and his top officials reading out of the Bible, preaching about how America is a country that's formed on the Bible and Christian principles. I mean, so I just don't want to downplay that either, because that's huge, unless it's all part of the deception. But I don't think they're all being deceived. I definitely totally hear what you're saying and believe it wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
I just think that there's got to be a side that we look at the full picture too. There's some good things going on. It's not all deception.
Right. I totally agree with you. And I think that's what makes it so hard, and why I haven't come out against Trump really at all, even though there were things all along that I was like, that's kind of fishy or whatever. And, it may be that he sincerely was trying to make America great. And maybe, and I don't want to judge him, even if it was, let's just say, even if it was for his own ego, it's an accomplishment. So maybe that's what drove him, in my opinion. It would be more of the accomplishment, look at what I did.
Exactly.
And that sort of thing. And then something changed where he felt cornered. He was being blackmailed. All of a sudden the Epstein files thing came up, and then maybe he's trying to play both sides right now, because maybe he's trying to play pro-Zionist and then anti-Zionist, and he's just in this big mess right now.
Trying to please everyone.
Yeah, so maybe he's stuck. So I don't know. But then on the other hand, we talk about just turning back to God. Like normally I would be like enthused, right? But when you see like some of these leaders that are a part of this, like Paula White, it's like,
Yeah,
it's not a real Christian leader, right? She's a nutcase, fruitcake. And then there was this guy that got up, and I'm not saying they're all like this, but there was this one guy that gave up and gave a speech, and his whole theme was it's for this 250th anniversary. He tied it back to the ballroom, and he thanked God for giving us Donald J. Trump, who could finally build us a ballroom that we've needed for 250 years. And I'm like, this is Esther type Christianity. This is on the surface, it looks like godliness and Christianity, but at its heart, it's not. And this is why I'm not sold into like this being legitimately true from Trump, because if it were legitimate, like if this was like an Ezra and Nehemiah movement where it was to the heart, these guys were repenting themselves, Ezra and Nehemiah. Solomon, when he dedicated the temple, it was like everything was like glory to God. But Trump, if he was going to make us actually believe that this was a real thing, he would repent for all of his sins, humble himself, get the damn statue out of his golf course, And that would then lead the way that way. And then we'd have a real rededication to God.
I totally
Because there are times in the Bible where the Israelites mouthed that they were turning back to God because they just wanted to have God's favor because they wanted to defeat the enemies, right? And God, there was even times where God says, you guys are coming to me in your solemn assemblies. You're having these great gatherings together where you're appearing before me. And then God says, I cannot stand your prayers. I won't hear your prayers, and I will not listen to your solemn assemblies. And he says, enough of it, away with it. He was so angry. Now, why he was angry in the Old Testament when Israel came before him with some kind of a rededication movement or a turning to God movement back then was because their heart was far from him, though they were making it look like they were worshipers of God, but their heart was far away from him. It wasn't a sincere turning and repentance to God. It was more of a Esther type manipulate God to have God give us favor, right? We don't like the economy this way, so God, we love you, and we're gonna kind of maybe try to seduce God into giving us what we want, versus total submission, just what. Nevertheless, Lord, Thy will be done. If it means we're going to go into a global famine, Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That kind of a mentality. But I feel like, in my opinion, and I totally get where you're coming from, I want to believe this because we hadn't heard it for so long. But so I think that makes the deception that much greater when you hadn't heard, when you had this. And I think it's part of the devil's strategy where it's a sales tactic, I think, too, where you present something that's really not what the person wants. And then you present them, you give them like the two choices thing. And maybe there's a third choice. Like you said before, and I think this is a strategy of Fox News to say that since we're against Israel, they highlight all these Islamist groups and leftists being against Israel. And they make you feel like if you're not for Israel, you're not on the right team. You're on the left team. Right. And I think what we need to do is realize there isn't just two ways. We're not the woke right or the woke Reich, like little Levin boy says. We are the Christian right, if you would. Okay, that's why I said Christian right, or we are the followers of Jesus Christ. And I do think we could literally probably reach out to some of the leftists, because I think a lot of the leftists see the hypocrisy of the Zionist Christian, and it draws them further away from the gospel because we make it all about political might and power and pro-Israel, this and that. Whereas if we start reaching out to some of the leftists and we say, yeah, I think I agree with you there. This Israeli thing, what they're doing to the Gazans is bad. And that might actually convert them to the gospel, because they might be thinking, oh my gosh, he doesn't just follow what Fox News says. Maybe he's a real Christian because he does have compassion towards this group. And then you can help unravel how they've been deceived by the leftist doctrine. So I think our job as Christians, I'll sum it up as this. We're supposed to unravel the lies of the left and the right.
Yeah.
Because they're both, what do they call it? Dialectic, whatever they call that. It's a game they play, right? I'm going to tie this back to even the scribes and the Pharisees during Jesus' time. The scribes, or the Pharisees and the Sadducees, both opposed Christ. The Sadducees were the leftists. They were not as religious as they didn't believe in life after death. They were a sect of the Jews that were the leftists. It would mirror your leftist politician. And the Pharisees were very right-wing, patriotic, pro-national. Okay, they wanted their nation. But they both hated Jesus because Jesus' message of the gospel was not the carnal Zionist type gospel that the Pharisees believed in. And it wasn't this radical lunatic left agenda. It was the true agenda. And I think that's our struggle right now, is they keep trying to like Mark Levin, he keeps trying to put that peer pressure. yeah, if you don't support Israel, you're one of those leftists, man. So then we just fall right in line with their
Yeah, that's a good point.
and their stuff. So
Read some of these comments. Forgot my cheaters.
forgot about these guys.
Our Prebo says, very good, insightful. Appreciate the work you put into this. He also says, your studio crew does a great job.
Today. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. I like to tease my son. He does a great job in a lot
Cheryl
of things.
says, good morning. Isabel says, what have I just learned? Father, help me understand what is going on in Jesus Christ's name.
Help us all to understand. Exactly.
Yeah.
I hope that's a good thing. I hope she's like blown away that when you're looking at this book, I hope that's a comment that it's like, whoa, there's
Right.
something a lot bigger going on. The deception's a lot greater than I could have imagined. And I want to figure this out. I hope that's what that was.
I think it is because she.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Praise God. We all need help with that.
Our Prebo says exactly, the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, pride of life. People are emotional and worldly and focused on their desires and forget the gospel.
Yeah.
Philip says, what is that? Scepter made me imagine. The king, the scepter made me imagine a phallic symbol.
I was waiting for that. I was waiting for somebody, but it's not far off.
That would have made the scene in verse 2 far more provocative.
I think I agree with him there. I think there's I'm telling you what, I think we are just scratching, literally scratching. I mean, a lot of people think this is probably really deep stuff, right? I think we're literally just scratching the surface of what this inversion is. I mean, I think it's at the end of the day, when we get to heaven, when we get to the end of this, we're going to be amazed at what was here and how it was right in our face all along.
Prebo says, good reminders and advice, Ben. Says, Francis, the false church will not baptize in the name of Jesus. And that's interesting. Cheryl says, go to the Zionism video that Ben has in the library. A great explanation of the history moving forward about the deceiving of Zionism and the serpent seed bringing in the beast system and Antichrist.
I'll just quickly add to that. We do on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. I got to say YouTube now because we have Rumble listeners and YouTube listeners. We have a whole bunch of different playlists on YouTube. One of them is titled Zionism. And I think it's most of the studies we've done on Zionism is cataloged there. And you could find that video and a lot of other ones there in that playlist.
Cheryl says Trump is obviously in God's plan, whether for good or fulfilling the end result. Either way, I feel it's God's plan, and he's allowing things to fall in place.
I totally agree with that, and I believe that the book of Esther itself is part of God's plan. I believe it's supposed to be, and I forgot to mention, like you'd say, well, how can you say that? God's name was spelled forward when Esther spoke today, when she spoke, and backwards when Haman spoke. I think it was spelled forwards because I think God was letting us know that he does permit evil to flourish for a time, just as he lets Satan flourish now, and then even locks Satan into the bottomless pit for 1,000 years and releases him for a short season to do his dirty work once again. Because I think even the negative figures in God's plan refine us. If there wasn't an Esther and a Mordecai, a lot of us wouldn't see some of the, let's say, I get angry. I get angry about what the serpent seed's doing to our country, but I wouldn't see that about myself if I didn't see there was a Haman. And I thought, whoa, they want me to be like Haman. It makes it easier for me to improve my inner being, to align, to be more Christ-like by seeing these bad guys. Okay, so there's a purpose for all this.
Our pre-will says, like Josiah, essentially.
Yeah, Josiah led a legitimate reformation. Yep, Josiah's reformation. I think he repented outwardly. But again, remember, Trump has never asked for forgiveness openly. So he was point blank asked that, and he said, I don't really think of it in terms like that. I just do good works. I do something good to cover up what I do bad.
Yeah, and I would be surprised if he ever did, and I don't think he ever will, but I'd like to think that the people around him possibly are, you know, 'cause Rubio seems like a pretty honest, legit person, you know, and when he, I don't know, did you see that little sermon he gave about?
I didn't.
You should pull it up later, and it was pretty good. I mean, it's very Christian powered, like not holding back. This is a Christian nation, and he's like second in charge, basically, or third in charge, I should say.
Well, and I have been hearing that you get a little secrets leaked by the anger of the enemy as well, like Mark Levin and I don't know if Ben Shapiro. Well, some of these Zionists were lamenting that Trump's listening to certain voices in his administration. Well, that gives me a little bit of hope that maybe a Rubio, maybe a Vance are actually trying to get Trump to do the right things. Yeah. And so I wouldn't, like you said, if Rubio gave something really good, I wouldn't doubt that there are really good people in there. And there are also, even if they are pro-Israel, there are people that I think are good people at heart, and it might just not be their time for God to reveal the dark side of Zionism, and maybe it's in God's timing with some of these people. Everybody comes to the truth at different stages and at different times. So the hard part for us is to be patient when we see somebody supporting something that's evil and you see it so clearly. The hard part is having the patience to guide them along in it versus getting frustrated and angry with them for being a dupe. You know what I mean?
A couple more here. Andreas says the carnal things in the Bible are based on the Roman Empire gods. The real gospel is based on much older writings, based in the Spirit. The flashy gospels are based on the gospel of Marcion, M-A-R-C-I-O-N. Marcion?
Cohen? Okay. I don't know.
And then Deanne says Rubio is a neocon and will bring us into useless wars. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, and that might be. Like I said, maybe, some of these guys, like I said, maybe they have the right intentions, but they're totally misled, or maybe we think they have the right intentions, but they're deceiving us. It's so hard to know. And I don't want to, I want to be careful that I don't judge them if I don't know. We can only talk about what they do. And Deanne's probably got a good point there. If he's doing a lot of neocon stuff, that's not good.
There is something to be said for, what's the best way to put it? Like the order of leadership, and if your president of your company is in charge and you're under him and your job is to protect and respect and follow orders, and in military, same thing. Yeah. So I think, some of these guys are just being good vice presidents, good secretary of states. They're honoring the president's position and following his orders. And
yeah, you make a point there. I mean, in their eyes, they could be just being supportive of the leader.
You're not going to agree with 100% of what your leader of your company or the leader of the military tells you to do, but if you're going to follow the rules and the order, you follow orders. You don't. Right. You don't say no. I'm not going to. I mean, if it's biblical, if it's against that whole thing, of course you don't follow orders if they're going to draw you away from God. But, it's just there's a fine line there, I think, where following orders from the president to do stuff that they probably don't even see the connection to the deeper, sin and evil. So
Yeah.
it's a,
Well, case in point, I mean, like I said, that's the hard thing is we don't want to get too judgy on people because there's and I'm not saying Deanne's being judgy, so just I totally get where you're coming from, based off of what you see, but E.W. Bullinger, the author of the Companion Bible, written 100 and something years ago, he was pro-Zionist. He was into dispensationalism that's attacked a lot today and all this kind of stuff. And I think some of his stuff is really, really good and helpful. It's one of the best study Bibles I've ever, it is the best study Bible I've ever possessed. I've used it for 30 years or so now. But he lived in a different time. So Zionism was fairly new. And so, he could have just kind of got duped by that. But I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater sort of thing. You just have to kind of be understanding. I mean, there's a lot of things that I know I probably have a blind eye to that people probably say, Pastor Ben Heath, I really like that guy, but he's really an idiot when it comes to this. And they're probably right. I probably have some blind spots that I'm not seeing. And I would rather have people be patient with me and pray for me than to hate me for that or discredit me altogether.
Well, that's a good segue to the final one here by Keith. It says, I've definitely been praying for patience, and I thank you for the studies.
All right. Well, yeah, we want to thank everybody for... Oh, you guys got some questions? All right, we do. I challenged them this morning. I'm like, you guys haven't spoken up lately. And so, what do you got? Do you want to be on camera or not?
No.
Okay.
So,
all right.
So with Trump and the Antichrist, I'm just having a hard time thinking that anyone else can come along and fit the profile of the Antichrist better than Trump has today.
That's what a lot of people are saying. I mean, it's those of us on the right, Damien and I, we see a lot of the things that he did that in the first term. We're like, yeah, it's all good. But that is what the Antichrist does really well when he appears on the scene. And the Antichrist is filled with pride. He's called the vile person. Trump's known to be vile at times and a lot of other things. So it's if he's not the Antichrist, what is the Antichrist going to look like when he comes? That's a good, fair point. I've heard people say that. Yeah. Like I said, I'm still not throwing out the idea that he could just be a guy that's motivated by pride, but he's getting caught into a trap here where he's either going to turn on his base and support the Zionists, or he's going to turn on the Zionists and support his base and risk getting killed for it, really getting killed, and maybe not just him, but his family and such. So it's interesting. Good question. Oh, we got another one?
How can you find the acrostics in the Bible?
Ooh, so the acrostics that I know about, the ones that I know about, there's some acrostics in the book of Psalms I know of. There's the 5 in Esther. There's a prominent one. There's several others. There's a prominent one in the book of Proverbs. It's called the Model Woman, where it describes what a perfect woman would be like. It's not like Esther, but and it starts with each of the Hebrew letters. It's got basically A through Z, or Aleph to Tav, in the Hebrew, and it's and so there are acrostics like that a lot of people, everybody knows about, right? And they've been published. A lot of them, you said, how do we know about them? A lot of them are highlighted in the original Hebrew manuscripts, where whoever the scribe was that transcribed it, they made the letters stand out. They made them bold. So you wouldn't have to search for these 4 letters to make this word. You would see it. Oh, it's the first letter of these 4 words. It spells Yahweh. And they make it bold so it stands out to you. Now, I'm sure there are a lot of other acrostics in the Bible that people haven't found, that if you were a Hebrew reader, scholar, you might find some in different phrases and such, and it might be pretty fascinating. So I don't think we've discovered them all, but the ones that most everybody knows about, they're pointed out to us most often in the Hebrew manuscripts. It'd be kind of like somebody took a highlighter and highlighted that letter, that letter, that letter, and that letter, and it spelled this word. Good question. That was a really good one. A+, you're getting an A for homeschool this week. Extra credit point for your the kids have a competition. We have test day on Friday, and whoever gets the most points is the winner, and there's monetary rewards connected to it, and so they get mad if somebody gets extra credit. So I'm having a little fun. And once I said extra credit, Jacob's staring at me like, that's not fair. You're favoring the youngest daughter of the household going on here, who looks like the mom. All right. Okay.
Okay, so you know how when you were saying that Esther was Mystery Babylon, did you just mean that as like a type, or like do you mean like literally?
Well, I think they're both I don't think Esther was a real person.
Mm-hmm.
It was it was a fictional story, but she represents, just like there isn't a real bride of Christ, right? There isn't. Yeah. It's like one woman that's Jesus's wife. It's the church. So it's a parable or a metaphor.
Okay.
So I think they're exactly one and the same. And so when there's it's not even a type. Esther literally is Mystery Babylon, because they're both. Mystery Babylon is the queen of she's called the queen. Yeah. Well, in Babylonian mythology, Ishtar was the queen of Babylon. Okay, she was the goddess queen of Babylon. Esther her very name means the goddess queen of Babylon, Ishtar.
Okay, yeah.
And when you look at it in the Hebrew, you guys think, well, how do you get Esther to Ishtar? When you look at it in the Hebrew, it's identical. It's virtually identical. Okay, the spelling, all the major consonants are the same, and maybe and it's like that in Hebrew a lot. Because the original Hebrew didn't even have vowel points. They didn't have vowels or vowel points. They literally just used consonants. And so if you ignore the vowel points, when you read Esther, it's exactly the same as Ishtar in the ancient Hebrew. So that's why they don't even try to deny that. Like the rabbis and stuff, they don't even try to deny and say, no, but what they try to say is, well, it doesn't really matter because Daniel had a Babylonian name and so on and so forth. So they try to cloak it under that reasoning.
Yeah.
Good question. Extra credit, extra credit.
In Esther chapter 4, do you know why Esther was scared about going to talk to the king about killing the Jews?
That is the $1 million question. You're absolutely right. I think that's what makes it a phony self-sacrifice, because it doesn't really. You wouldn't be afraid if you were the queen, okay? Lucy, if you were the queen of the king, would you be afraid to go talk to the king and ask him for? That's literally what the queen's job is to do, is to be the king's advisor, right? The closest advisor. I mean, she wears a crown. She's royalty. She's second, and she already has half the kingdom. It's funny because when he said half of the kingdom is yours, well, she really already is half the kingdom because she's the queen. And so the $1 million question is, did Esther really risk her life to go before the king? And logic tells us no. Why would that? How would there be any risk there? So it's a fake risk, and that's why I tied in, and I had my brain fart, and I tied in all the things that Trump has done, which may have been fake risks and so on and so forth, fake sacrifices, or maybe not. I'm not going to judge them. But what I'm saying is those things can happen, right? Where you can make it look like you're doing, like somebody'd say, I'll do this for you, but just this time, okay? You make it look like it's just going to cost you so much, and maybe it doesn't really cost you that much. It's a strategy to get people to think you're doing something great when maybe it's really not that great. Good question.
I'm just gonna go back to what you're talking about with that that video, that guy like mocking the Jew and everything. Which one thing that I noticed in there is he brought up the book International Jew by Henry Ford.
Right.
Now anybody that like hears anybody talk or mention the book, you're like, oh, you're a Nazi because this crazy nutcase guy is like using that book and then like cussing out the Jew.
Well,
When really that book, there's a lot of good, interesting things in there that aren't like hateful or anything like that towards the Jew. They're just pointing out facts.
right. He even, I as far as my remembrance goes, I read that book a long time ago, and I'm reading it here recently. But my understanding is, when you look at him, he wasn't an anti-Semite. Like, he didn't hate all Jews just because they were Jewish. What he did do is he pointed out the history of the leaders of the Jews and how they've interacted with governments in Europe and how they're interacting with America, the amount of influence they've had, and so on and so forth. But it's not coming from the standpoint of we hate these people or whatever. He's just trying to understand the world around him and be truthful and factual about it. And I haven't come across anything where he says, oh, we ought to hate all the Jews because they're Jews. I'm not seeing that, okay? Like I said, I've read the entire book before. I'm rereading it again since we're doing the book of Esther. And I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing a lot of truthful statements that might hurt people that don't want you to know what they're doing. And so if you're a bad guy and you're doing bad things, you don't want people to shine the light on you and say, hey, look at what he's doing. This is the facts. No, you're the bad guy. That's the whole anti-Semitism trick is they try to make it out that you hate all Jews just because you're pointing out that some very powerful Zionist Jews are doing some very nefarious stuff. And you're not saying that my neighbor down the street who's a Jew, who maybe you golf with on the week, you're not saying you hate him because he's Jewish. It doesn't have anything to do with him, right? Well, so it's like that's what they're trying to label you as for questioning powerful, evil people doing evil things. Yeah, I don't think Henry Ford was anti-Semitic. I think he was just trying to get all the facts that he could. It'd be like if you did some research today and say, okay, who owns all the major porn industries? Who's controlling Hollywood? And if they happen to be 70%, 80%, 99% of people who claim to be Jews, how come you can't say that if that's the case? Now, here's where the problem would be. If you said it was 85, if you said the porn industry was, and this, I'm just random numbers, was 85% controlled by people who claim to be Jews, and it was actually 10%, then that's the argument that should be had. You should say, instead of calling the person an anti-Semite, you say, wait a second, where are you getting your facts? Because I see John Smith and Peter Popoff and Joe Blow owning these porn industries, and they don't claim to be of Judah, so, but they don't do that. It's right away. There's no logic, no real debate. It's shut down to debate, emotionally charge you as a hater and an anti-Semite. Good question, Jacob. Half credit. He walked in late today, so that's why I'm digging at him.
Before we end, I just want to say that we updated the website. I just don't want you to forget to say it.
Oh yeah.
So make sure you check it out because we put all the latest Rumble videos on there, and it's all newly updated. So, yeah. Yeah. Thanks for reminding me. Our website has been totally revamped. We, like you said, we have all of our latest videos embedded we stream from Rumble there, and then below that, all of our prophecy updates, which get streamed in from our X account, and so it's basically our website now is kind of a one place stop or one place shop, whatever,
One-stop shop, yeah. A one-stop shop. If you want to get our latest studies, or I try to post something every day on X, maybe 1, 2, or 3 comments, tie in current events, talk about what the book we're in, give a little deeper thought about what we're studying, what's to come, or expose something going on in the news, so on and so forth. So you can go to our website even daily and get new content there. And of course, we are now, I'll add this to it, live streaming twice a week instead of just on Sundays. We're now doing Thursday mornings at 9 and Sundays at 10:30. Anything else? All right. God bless everybody. Stay in His Word every single day so that you can be a Christian overcomer.
Great sign burning in the sky, woman crying, crowned with light. Dragon waiting at her feet, teeth like night, heart full of spite. Child is carried to a throne, war breaks out above this world, earth opens like a shield.